as well as uncovering the backstory of its title character. Solo, a Star Wars story, added even more depth and lore to the galaxy far, far away. So, with that in mind, let's take a closer look at 10 background characters from the latest Star Wars anthology movie. Lady Proxima. The matriarch of the White Worms, a criminal organisation that formed the backbone of Coronet's black market, Lady Proxima ruled over her scrumrat underlings with ruthless efficiency. She did so by setting immensely steep prices for stolen and prohibited goods, from which she received almost all of the credits. So while her underpaid and underprivileged workers slaved away on the rough streets of Corellia, Proxima lay underneath a briny pool of water in her unusual den and throne room, feeding her Grindelid hatchlings. Moloch. Due to the dense atmosphere of their homeworld, one that filtered out most of the sunlight, many Grindelids chose to hide away in the dark depths of Corellia's slums. Moloch, on the other hand, well, he was one of the very few brave enough to venture out of the shadows. Using customised full seal armour to do so, many mistook him as a two-legged creature. Little did they know that years of impersonating a humanoid walk was what allowed him to stand upright upon his tapered tail segments. As a result, Moloch ruled over the humanoid servants of the White Worms with a sense of superiority, all while directly serving Lady Proxima. He was also unafraid of utilising his Snubble Special Pistol. This double snub-nosed blaster, which had its stun setting removed for ensured lethal force, packed a powerful punch despite its small nature and limited ammunition stores. On the contrary, Moloch often piloted a Trask-heavy Transport's AA-4B truck speeder. Propelled by a loud and most definitely powerful engine, such a vehicle easily thrusted the brute and his snarling Sibian hounds through the main streets of Coronet. Rebolt and Psyche. As Moloch's favourite goons, Rebolt and Psyche were always in competition with one another to prove who exactly was the toughest. To say the rivalry was intense and fueled by hatred would have been a bit of an understatement. For one, Psyche wanted to unleash his favourite Sibian hound, Talmat, upon his colleague to once and for all end their petty contest. But despite the ferocity of such fleet-footed canine creatures, Rebolt was always considered the better animal handler. Failing to show the same gentle fondness towards Corellian hounds as his partner did, a weakness the unimaginative and pitiless goon sought to exploit, Rebolt was driven by ambitions that greatly outweighed his natural abilities. For example, he grew up in the den of the White Worms, aspiring to one day become Lady Proxima's head boy. In fairness, smarter scrumrats such as Han Solo and qi'ra hampered such a cause by undermining Rebolt at every turn. But at least his future rank allowed him to afford a breathing collar that fanned purified air into his face rather than being forced to wear a restrictive mask. Moreover, Rebolt was able to back up his bullying words with a bludgeoning staff he handcrafted himself, nicknamed after the Sabacc face card of the same name, and using a snapped transmission mast with ends wrapped in leather straps. The commander of staffs electrocuted unfortunate foes due to its power cell and conductive surfaces. Orodia Ventifoli. Billed as Chanteuse of the Stars, and often paired with a classic supper club singer, Orodia Ventifoli was a best-selling recording artist. As such, she and her vocal abilities were always in high demand, forcing Dryden Voss to pay a rather hefty sum to maintain her services aboard his private yacht. The Leo Primoc. Whether it be in a dashing humanoid exosuit, which he donned in a series of old Hollow movies, or a repulsor-fitted mask filled with formaldehyde, first impressions of the Leo Primoc seem to suggest anything but a legendary recording artist. And while he came to surpass his chart-topping success of the Clone Wars, the singer was still highly favoured by retro collectors and enthusiasts alike. Val. Contrary to her outwardly expressive and talkative nature, Val was fiercely protective over her past, so much so that her longtime co-conspirators failed to realise her full name. Even her closest ally, Tobias Beckett, only really knew two pieces of information about her: the fact that her father was a musician and that she was named after the Valacord instrument. What was abundantly clear about Val, however, was that she could squeeze into hard-to-reach areas due to a combination of her natural athleticism and grappling gear. She did so to plant her homemade magnetically affixed baradium bombs, all of which required expert knowledge of chemistry and electronics, not to mention a steady hand. with a detonator that was keyed to her biological signature, Val used a modified net thrower to quickly traverse large distances, up to 600 meters to be precise. Its motorized reel of synthar rope was backed by a compact set of 12 propellant thrusters, and sure was a far cry from the weapon usually used to capture Gueric's Hay, a species of reptilian creatures native to Veron. Rio Durant. Having joined the Freedom Sons as a young Ardenian, an independent army that assisted the Galactic Republic throughout the Clone Wars, Rio Durant was certainly no stranger to dangerous assignments, so when he and Tobias Beckett began their criminal careers together, Rio utilised his military skills to complement the grizzled gunslinger's careful planning. And while his very own cunning schemes often fell to the wayside, thanks to his inability to refuse challenges, especially if it would later make for a good story, Rio was a good-natured pilot with a passion for galactic cuisine. Senna and Sagwa. Just like the many Wookiees, Hauks and fellow Gygorans found within the spice mines of Kessel, all of whom were rounded up by the Galactic Empire with very little cause, Senna was targeted due to his natural strength. Likewise, years of heavy lifting more than took its toll on the body of Sagwa, a Wookiee hailing from the inland tree city of Rywook Rural. Despite this, however, he continued to display the very same selfless attitude that led to his initial capture. So there we have it, a closer look at 10 background characters from Solo: A Star Wars Story. But which one do you prefer? Let me know in the comments below. If you've learned something new from today's video, be sure to leave a like. To help out the channel that little bit extra, please do consider pledging to our Patreon page, and for weekly lore content, press that subscribe button and notification bell to keep it locked here to the Carcasans.